Welcome to my Week 11 Top 10 Games of the Week. It's been an amazing season. I've already previewed over 100 matchups this year, or 100 matchups this year with the 10 games that I've looked at. I say over 100 because I actually already previewed this week's matchups. I did the whole video, got all the way to the end, and then when I went to look at the video, even though it said it was recording, nothing had saved. So I'm having to redo it again. This is the 110th set of games I'm doing, but for me it's really the 120th. So I'll try and deliver the same amount of energy and pose. I was going to do the video last night, which is when I tried to shoot it, but because of that mess up, I was too mad. I had to take a break. So I'm coming back to it, and I'm going to try to get through these quickly because the baby's sleeping in the room and I'm on baby duty today, and I want to get through these as quickly as possible before she wakes up. All right, so let's jump right into it then. Enough chit-chat. We're going to get right into the top 10 games of the week. How have I done so far this season? Well, predicting wins, losses, I'm 62%, 62 out of 100. Just behind ESPN, who's 69 out of 100, 69%. Overall, though, against the over-under, well, picking against the spread, that is over-under on the projected point spread, I am 73 out of 100, so 73% picking on that. So this is a great game. It's been one of the best, this is a great set of games. It's been one of the best weeks, one of the best years. Sorry, stumbling over myself here. One of the best years for college football ever. It's been one of the craziest seasons. It's had the most top 15 upsets of any year. There's been so many crazy storylines, teams overperforming, underperforming, and of course, just the general insanity that you never know what's going to happen week to week. I've been pretty good at predicting it in the midst of all this insanity. We'll have to see if that can continue down the last stretch of here. There's some big storylines developing. Can Cincinnati work their way into the playoffs? Does Oklahoma have a shot? Are they, can they finish strong and get in? Who's going to be that Final Four? Because it's been a bouncy one in the AP poll this season. It's been a bouncy one so far through the first 2 weeks of the CFP poll. So let's jump right into it. We're going to look at the games just outside real quick, those on the others list, and then we'll go through the top 10 through number 1, give you the Vegas prediction, the ESPN prediction, my predictions for the win-loss, my prediction against the over-under, top players for each game, a little bit short analysis on each game itself, and then of course when and where you can watch those games. All right, so first off, just outside the top 10 this week for games to watch. Mississippi at number 17, Auburn. UCF at SMU. Minnesota at number 20, Iowa. Air Force at Colorado State. Big game for Boise State fans because they need Air Force and Utah State to both drop a game for Boise State to have a chance of getting the Mountain West Championship game. And it's a rivalry game there, interstate rivalry there between Colorado State and Air Force. And then you've got number 25, Arkansas at LSU. That should be a good game. Arkansas new to the top 25 rankings this week. And then, of course, LSU, who almost knocked off Alabama last week. And then Utah State versus San Jose State. San Jose State actually favored by Vegas in that one, so that could be a good shot for Utah State to get the loss that Boise State desperately needs them to take. All right, jumping in the top 10 here. So first off, number 10, number 9, Notre Dame at 6-3 UVA, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All times are in Eastern Time on ABC. Notre Dame favored by 5.5 points and given a 55.3% chance of winning it. So they know the analysts are saying it's going to be close, and I absolutely agree with that. This is a UVA team that, they're 6-3, had some disappointing losses, to BYU a couple weeks ago, but they're still a good team. And this is an important matchup for both teams. For Notre Dame, it's one of their best matchups the rest of the season, honestly. And UVA is one of the best ACC schools that they play this year. And then it's a big matchup for Notre Dame. For UVA, it's always big when a chance gets. It's always big when a school gets a chance to play Notre Dame. However, the team that this is the biggest for, the most impacting for, is a team that's not even in the top 10 for matchups this week, Cincinnati. Cincinnati has had a terrible last 3 weeks with close wins, almost losses, but close wins to Tulane, Navy, and Tulsa. And they are basically being pushed into conversation for the top 4 spots. They're at number 5, just outside. They're being pushed ahead by that win over Notre Dame. Notre Dame, with that one loss, is good enough team that they are sparking the debate and pushing Cincinnati ahead of them and might push them all the way to the playoffs if Notre Dame goes undefeated. So Cincinnati, this game's even bigger than their game. I mean, obviously they need to win against USF this week, but that shouldn't be too hard, and at the end of the day, win or lose, that's probably not going to make a big impact. This game, win or lose, will make a huge impact. If Notre Dame loses another game out the rest of the way, unless some crazy things happen, I don't think Cincinnati gets in. If Notre Dame goes undefeated all the way out and Cincinnati's able to get some blowout wins, I think that Cincinnati does have a good shot at getting into the playoffs. So this is going to be a big one. A determiner who might have a key player who might have something to say about it, though, is the UVA quarterback, Brennan Armstrong, one of the most pressured quarterbacks in the nation with 23 sacks sacks this year, but he's thrown for 3,557 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions, despite having basically no offensive line. So if the offensive line can give him it any time at all today, or any time at all this week, and this is going to be a game, of course, that's on Saturday. But if they can give the quarterback here in Armstrong any time at all, UVA has a great shot of winning this one. I am going to call Notre Dame with a win. I'm going to call over on the over-under on this one, just slightly, probably 7-point victory, maybe 7-10. But I am going to call Notre Dame with a win and over on the over-under. But UVA has a very, very, very strong chance of winning this one. And after their game on, I think Cincinnati plays on Friday. So after the game on Friday, the Cincinnati fans, this is going to be their number. If you're a Cincinnati fan, this is your number one game of the week. Make sure you're watching 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. All right, number 9 overall, Wyoming 5-4 at Boise State 5-4, 9 p.m. Friday, FS1. Now these are two completely different 5-4 teams. Completely different 5-4 teams right now. Wyoming started the season 4-0, but has gone 1-4 the last 5 games. Boise State, completely different script. They started the season 2-3, but have actually gone 3-1 the last 4 games. So one team starting out hot in Wyoming, but stumbling down the stretch. Boise State struggling to find themselves early, but complete turnaround, especially started with that massive, kicked off with a massive win against Fresno State last week. I think that's really kicked off this new energy that's going to carry through the rest of the season and into the seasons beyond, as we are finally, I believe, entering for real the new Andy Avalos era and what he is capable of bringing to this Boise State program. So Boise State is favored by 13.5 points, given an 89% chance of winning. It's a Wyoming team that has some very good defense, has played very good defense this year, and is pretty good at running the ball. Has a new quarterback in, has a brand new quarterback in here for them, a 6'5" product, which coincidentally is the same height as Wyoming's former first-round draft pick, Josh Allen. So you cannot leave the Wyoming defense or offense out of this one. Wyoming definitely in this game, and that quarterback is Levi Williams for Wyoming. That's their new quarterback. So he's going to have a lot to say in this one, but however, the key player for this game for me is running back George Helani. Only 283 yards rushing and 1 touchdown so far this season. However, he's been injured pretty much going through last season. However, last week he had 117 yards rushing and 69 yards receiving when he was fully back for the first time this year. Fully back, fully healthy, no snap count, playing at his maximum potential, and obviously coming in rusty. I think he's coming to an even higher potential this week with a full game of experience under his belt. So watch out. He is going to be a key player in determining whether Boise State is able to not just win this, but Boise State wants to dominate. They want to prove that they can dominate conference foes after dropping 3 games in a row at home this season. First time they've done this since 1996. Now, if you want to see my actual prediction on the over-under and who is going to win this, you're going to have to watch my Boise State review or Boise State versus Wyoming preview video. I'll put that link in the description. But this should be a very, very interesting game. Definitely one you're going to want to watch because it's a new Boise State team. It should be an exciting game. And it's a Boise State team that you could see playing in the Mountain West Championship game for sure. All right, number 8 here, North Carolina at number 21, Pittsburgh, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN, and that game is Thursday, and the Boise State game is on Friday, if I didn't mention that. All right, so this game is on Thursday, so again, that's one of the reasons I want to get this video out earlier so people can make sure that they know about this top game, so make sure they're watching some of these matchups that are happening on Thursdays and Fridays. It's not all Saturday this week. All right, so this is a big game. Not so much because of the matchup that it's in. It's not that big of a game for North Carolina necessarily. Who doesn't really have that much to play for the rest of the season. But it's a big game for Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh is leading their division of the ACC right now. And UVA is hot on their heels. Pittsburgh is 4-1. UVA is 4-2. The two of them still have to play. If Pittsburgh loses here, that game against UVA, which is already big, is going to become a final decider on who wins. If Pittsburgh loses to North Carolina this week, they will not be able to overcome a head-to-head loss against UVA. If they win against North Carolina this week, UVA still has a couple of tough games. If Pittsburgh wins this week and loses to UVA, which I think that game is next week or whatever it is, if they lose to UVA, if UVA loses their final game of the season, then Pittsburgh would still be able to get in. So it's not a done deal if Pittsburgh wins this. But if they lose to North Carolina today, even if UVA end up losing that last game, Pittsburgh would not be in, and UVA would lead their division into the ACC championship game. It's been I talk about crazy seasons. Well, it's been an absolute insane season. Who could have predicted that Clemson would be basically completely out of the conversation, and you'd be talking about Pittsburgh, UVA, NC State, and Wake Forest as the top 4 teams to lead their separate sections of the division there. So crazy season so far. Pittsburgh is favored by 6.5 points and given a 76.4% chance of winning it. The North Carolina running back here, Ty Chandler, only 884 yards rushing, but 13 touchdowns. He's going to be a big part of this. Even if Sam Howell struggles, he's been pretty consistent, especially in the red zone. So I think that's going to be a big point of emphasis for North Carolina in trying to win this game. I do think that North Carolina is the better team. I absolutely, on paper, you look at their recruiting classes, you look at the guys that they have on the field, and I think that they are on paper the better team here. However, North Carolina doesn't, like I said, doesn't have anything to play for. They're guaranteed to get to bowl eligibility. They have an FCS opponent they play here in a week or two, and they're going to get to 6 wins. They're not playing for an ACC championship. That's not on the table. They're just trying to kind of put some, plaster on this knockdown wall that's been their season so far this year. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, has everything to play for and a lot to lose if they lose this one. So I think definitely motivation and why you're playing a game impacts and can overcome, in most cases, that skill gap. And so I think that even though North Carolina is the better team, and if these two teams were playing for the same thing, I think North Carolina would win. I'm calling Pittsburgh for the win in this one, but I'm going to call under on the over-under. I think it'll be a little closer than that 6.5 points. All right, number 7 here, TCU 4-5 at number 10, Oklahoma State, 8 p.m. on Fox. And Oklahoma State is favored by 13 points, given an 80.5% chance of winning. But TCU is hot off of a massive win last week against Baylor, where there was the 110th matchup in that series between Baylor and Oklahoma State. And TCU got the win. A big part of that was because Chandler Morris, who replaced the flagging Max Dugan, they replaced him, and he came in, the true freshman, had his first start, and had an incredible outing. 29 out of 41, 461 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 70 rushing yards, and a touchdown. And I think it was on 11 carries. So this is a guy who can run the ball and can clearly pass the ball. I mean, how many true freshmen on their first outing there go over and throw for almost 500 yards? Not many of them. I mean, this is a quarterback that could be defining TCU's seasons going forward here, especially with Oklahoma and Texas leaving the Big 12. Someone's got to step up here to fill that void, to become that next perennial championship contender. Could it be the relatively new, but definitely older than the new members joining, relatively new conference member here in TCU? Could they finally establish themselves as a top team in the Big 12? Well, I think that Chandler Morris has a lot to say in that, and a lot of it's going to depend on how he follows up that game. Was that a one-off? Was it kind of just one of those crazy performances where everything works out in the moment? And is that something is that the peak in his first start? Is that the peak of his career, or is he going forward and going to be playing bigger and better things the rest of his seasons? I think we're going to see a big testament here in this Oklahoma State game. This is a tough matchup here against Oklahoma State, absolutely. I do think that Oklahoma State will get the win. However, I'm going to call under on the over-under here. I do think it'll be less than that 13-point spread. Oklahoma State's been a little bit one-dimensional in a lot of their games, very focused in on that running game, and I think that might hurt them a little bit here. And I do think that Chandler Morris is going to have a good game, but I think he's going to start making some of those mistakes that you see out of true freshmen that lack just a little bit of that awareness, or a lot of that awareness, honestly, and perhaps coming off of a big matchup against Baylor, a little overconfident in this one. So I think Oklahoma State gets the win by going over on the over-under. Sorry, under on the over-under. All right, number 6 here, Nevada, 7-2. At number 22, 8-1, San Diego State's at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS Sports Network. Absolute abomination that this game is so late, because this is a awesome matchup. First off, it's going to be very, very exciting to watch between two of the top teams in the Mountain West, but it's also an incredibly important matchup because there's two things riding on this. Both of these teams are still in contention for the Mountain West Championship, for their division, the Mountain West Division Championship, the title to move into the Mountain West Championship game. Both these teams still in strong contention for that. Secondly, though, this is a potential New Year's 6 disqualification round, because if Cincinnati is able to get into the playoffs, top 4, as far as my understanding, I haven't found anything to contradict this. If someone finds something and is able to throw it in the comments, please do. But I've done a lot of research on this, and I haven't found anything to contradict this. And according to what ESPN is predicting, it looks like they're also going off of the same basic information. But if Cincinnati is able to get into the playoffs, the New Year's 6 at-large bid should still be open, just like if Ohio State or whoever wins the Big Ten gets into the playoffs, the second-place team in the Big Ten will get their automatic bid to the New Year's 6. So assuming that if Cincinnati is able to get that, start to correct their season here, if Notre Dame's able to go undefeated, and Cincinnati is able to get into the playoffs there, then the next highest ranked Group of 5 conference champion is going to be that team that represents in the New Year's Six. And right now, the next two in line are San Diego State after Fresno State lost. San Diego State sitting here at number 22, and UTSA sitting at number 23 right behind them. Now, UTSA doesn't have enough of the conference is so weak there in Conference USA, and doesn't have enough of enough quality wins remaining or really on their schedule to be a jump over a San Diego State team if they can go undefeated here on out. But this is a massive step here for San Diego State. If they can win this one, it will make them be able to create some space in between them and UTSA. And of course, if they lose this one, they'll be out of it will destroy the Mountain West entirely for having any chance to get into that New Year's Six discussion. Now, Boise State still has to play San Diego State, so San Diego State's not completely off the ropes if they beat Nevada in this one. But it is a massive, massive game with a lot on the line. So San Diego State is favored by not by much, 2.5 points, and given a 56.4% chance of winning according to ESPN. However, while this is a good San Diego State team, and they're definitely better than I predicted, ESPN was predicting a 7-5 season. I was predicting a 6-6 season. Very disappointing year last year for San Diego State. So even though they are better than most people were predicting here, and they are a good team, absolutely, and I'm not trying to diss San Diego State in any way here, Nevada is a great team. They are truly an excellent program. They already have a big win, 10-point victory against Boise State. Really 10 out of Boise State's only lost 4 games. Not only Boise State has lost 4 games this year, but the total margin of defeat is only 23 points. Well, 10 of those points came in one game against Nevada. So this is a very, very good Nevada team. One of the best Nevada teams I've seen since Colin Kaepernick was at the helm back there in 2010. So, and they're talking about top quarterbacks here. Well, that's the reason Nevada is such a great team this year, is because of their top quarterback, one of the top quarterbacks in the Group of 5, quarterback Carson Strong, 3,197 yards passing. He's 4th in the nation in passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, but the touchdowns and the passing yardage is very, very impressive. Nevada also has a decently competent running game to complement that. I do think Nevada is the better team in this one. I think they deserve to be in the top 25 right now. Their only losses are to Kansas State and Fresno State, and those are pretty good losses there, and they have some wins over some very good teams. They beat, was it Cal? Because Utah State beat Washington State. So they beat Cal to start the year. Of course, they have a win against Boise State, who's proving to be better than that 5-4 record. So this is a good Nevada team. I do think that they take the upset. So upset alert, upset in this one, and potentially jump into that top 25. I said the Mountain West would be out of contention if San Diego State lost this one, and just based on where UTSA is right now. But, it's never done it's never over until it's over. San Diego State, Nevada goes the rest of their season here and beats a quality team out of the mountain in the Mountain West. That might be enough to leapfrog them over UTSA. We'll have to see, but I think that Nevada wins this one and potentially is in the discussion to jump into the top 25, which would be a huge win for Wolfpack program. It has some very subpar years really over the past 10 years. So Nevada winning this one, calling over on the over-under. All right, number 5 overall. So in the top 5 of the week, and I'm doing okay on time. I was faster in my first video, but oh well, oh well, as it is. We got to do this. We had to reshoot it, and you know what? I'm saying some extra things that I think are real quality stuff here. So we're gonna just keep on pushing. All right, Washington State 5-4 at number 3, 8-1 Oregon. This is a big game, and it's another game that's at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Absolutely abominable. Pac-12 gets slammed with it, almost as much as the Mountain West does. That's where that, oftentimes that East Coast bias factors in because nobody's watching these games. Well, Oregon, they are a playoff contender here, obviously, at number 3 in the nation. And they're favored big in this one by 14 points, given an 82.7% chance of winning. However, Washington State is a team that is better than their overall record right now. They've had some very close wins, and I think that they people are sleeping here on Washington State. Also, Oregon lost to Stanford, and most people, myself included, believe that they are overranked. They're only ranked where they are because they have that head-to-head win against Ohio State, and the committee's got to justify Ohio State being in that top 4 there. So I think that Oregon's definitely overranked. I think that this could be a dangerous game for them. They could be sleeping a little bit on Washington State, and I think that Washington State is a better team than most people are projecting in this. So a big determiner in this is going to be their linebacker, Washington State's linebacker, Jay Woods. He's 6'1", 225 pounds, has 72 tackles on the season. That's 20 more than the next closest tackler on the team, who has 52. So he's a big playmaker here for Washington State. He could have a lot to say. Oregon struggled against Fresno State, who has a pretty good defense. And Washington State here, I think that they can present a competent defense against Oregon and maybe catch them napping. However, I do think Oregon's going to take the win in this one. I think that when it's all said and done, Oregon's got more to play for than Washington State does. I think that they'll be surprised early, but come out strong in the second half and get this win. So it's a good one. You're going to want to stay up for both of these games. Pour yourself a hot beverage, or get your favorite midnight snack food, wherever that is. Get it set out and watch these games, because they're going to be very, very close matchups with some very big implications for the New Year's Six and for the playoffs potentially in both of these. But I do think Oregon gets the win, but I'm calling Cole under on the over/under. All right, number 4 in the nation here. Number 11, 7-2 Texas A&M, and number 15, 7-2 Ole Miss, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Texas A&M favored by Vegas by 2.5 points, but Ole Miss favored by ESPN, given a 55.3% chance of winning. A big part of that has been Matt Corral. He's going to be the key player of the game here for this one. Matt Corral, 2,527 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 2 picks, also 520 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns. However, I was just at the Ole Miss Liberty game this last weekend. My second team, Liberty, was playing them. They were within driving distance, so I went up and watched the Liberty versus Ole Miss game. And Liberty had a little bit of a slow, not to recap the game, but Liberty had a little bit of a slow start, but came out strong in the second half, and honestly was right in there with a chance to beat Ole Miss there. Now, I'm a big Liberty Flames fan. I absolutely am, and I am not putting anything against Liberty's performance in this one. They looked like they were close to Ole Miss's equal, but that's a bad thing for Ole Miss, because this is not the same Liberty team that played last year. The offensive line is very, very weak. Has taken a lot of shots. They played pretty well last week, honestly, but it's a Liberty offense that's just, Liberty team as a whole has been out of whack. The special teams unit has been a disaster. The defense has not been as strong as it was last season. The running game has not established itself at all. When Liberty had multiple running backs last season that were all competing for 100-yard games left and right. So the running game has not been able to establish itself at all. The wide receivers have seemed to have taken a slight step back. Offensive line has been paper, basically. The defense has not been as strong, and the special teams unit has been an absolute disaster. All that to say, Ole Miss almost lost to Liberty. I thought it was a great performance out of my Flames. I was happy. I was excited to see it, and I would have loved to see Liberty pull off the upset. But this is not the same Ole Miss team that we saw earlier in the season. This is an Ole Miss team that is injured. Matt Corral still, I believe, dealing. He did not look, dealing with that injury that he suffered in the Auburn game, that ankle injury. He did not look as elusive and explosive. He had over 300 passing yards, so he still had a good game. But he did not look as good as he usually does for Ole Miss here, neither in the passing game or in the running game. And I think he was able to take advantage of some passing opportunities that the porous Liberty secondary provided. But I think that was more on Liberty's defense than it was on Matt Corral's abilities to get the ball off accurately. So this is not the same. They are missing, like I said, not the same Ole Miss team. They are missing 3 starting wide receivers. They're missing a starting tight end, a starting right guard, and Matt Corral not looking 100%. I definitely think that Texas A&M is going to take the win in this one, so I think Vegas is calling it correctly. But I think it's going to be a pretty big win here by Texas A&M. I'm going to call over on the over-under. As a Liberty Flames fan, I would love to see Ole Miss be able to come out with the win in this one. Absolutely would love to see them, because that would make Liberty, I think, look even better. So obviously I'm rooting for Ole Miss. However, I just think that Texas A&M, that Ole Miss is not showing that they are the team that started the year fully healthy, 100% healthy. Ole Miss team, that is a team that could compete with Alabama and Georgia. I absolutely believe that this season. However, with the injuries that they're suffering, with Matt Corral not looking 100%, I don't think that they are that team anymore. I think they're going to struggle in this game against Texas A&M. All right. Number 3 overall here. Number 6, 8-1, Michigan at 6-3, Penn State, noon on ABC. This game is even, so I'm not going to be calling it over on this one, but ESPN is giving them a Michigan 54.4% chance of winning. So they're understanding how close this is, and obviously Michigan's the better team. But honestly, I thought they were the better team against Michigan State. But you know what happens every year with Michigan? They start out strong. They have some massive wins, point differential, massive wins. Their offense looks good. Overall, they look good as a team. And then they get into these key matchups, these important games that they absolutely have to win, and they Harbaugh out. I am a fan of Harbaugh. I love his go-get-it attitude and the fact that he just always puts the pedal to the metal and just drives teams into the ground. I absolutely love that. However, the man cannot win when the chips are down and they actually need to. He just can't. This is a Penn State game that's at Penn State, which is incredibly hard to play at. It's a Penn State team that they're not ranked, but they're still good. Disappointing season from what it could have been for Penn State. At one point, they were in the top 4, and now they're not even ranked. So this is a Penn State team that's having a disappointing season based on where they thought they would be at the start of the year or midway through the year. But it's still a good Penn State team. They have a great wide receiver here. That's my key player of the game here in Jay Dotson, 932 yards receiving, 9 touchdowns. That's good for 11th in the nation overall in receiving yards total. So this is a good Penn State. I do think I'm going to call because analytically, statistically, when you look at these two teams on the field, Michigan should win this game. So I am going to call a win by Michigan. However, I would not be surprised at all, and to a certain extent, I'm almost expecting it for Michigan to totally fluff it, pull it under Nebraska here and be unable to finish the game when they need to and get those wins. Nebraska can't finish football games where Harbaugh can't finish seasons. So maybe Harbaugh should go coach at Michigan at Nebraska. They'd be perfect for each other. All right, so I'm going to call Michigan with a win here, but again, would not be surprised at all if Penn State gets the upset in this one. All right, number 2 overall. Here we go. Number 2 in the nation for top 10 games of the week. Number 16, NC State. At number 12, Wake Forest. NC State 4-1 ACC, 8 Wake Forest 5-0 ACC. Unfortunately, they're no longer undefeated. Knocked last week's loss to North Carolina, knocked Wake Forest out of any chance of getting to the ACC, and the ACC will not be getting a team into the playoffs. I would put all my money on it. Can absolutely guarantee that Wake Forest and that no ACC team is with a loss, because that conference is so weak this year, that no team from the ACC is going to be able to get in to the playoffs this season. However, this is still a big game for the for that ACC division title there. Wake Forest, like I said, 5-0 conference, even though they lost in conference. Well, last week's game against North Carolina was not actually a conference game. The ACC has this weird, and I don't like it, so I think stupid rule that they allow teams to play inter-conference games as non-conference matchups. I think it takes away from opportunities to diversify and show what the full college football world brings to the table, knocks out opportunities for a group of 5 teams. I like games between different conferences much more than I do multiple conference matchups in a season. So or adding more conference matchups, as it were. And I know we're moving in that direction, but I hate it because I think it just creates this polarization and divide within college football between the haves and the have-nots. And it also, I think, creates this divide in college football overall, even in the power divisions, where you just have these elitist sections of the country playing themselves and then claiming that they're their top team without any true parallels or comparisons, because they've just been playing each other. So you aren't able to really tell who is the best team out of the nation. You just kind of have to guess it. And we're getting more and more and more into guesswork with this CFP playoff format as we move away from the BCS era. Little side rant over there. However, NC State versus Wake Forest is a big game this week because Wake Forest is undefeated. If NC State can beat Wake Forest here, they will own the head-to-head, and almost definitely the winner of this game will move into or represent in the ACC championship game. So 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ACC Network, a massive game. Wake Forest favored by Vegas by 2 points, but this is another split between Vegas and ESPN. ESPN is favoring NC State by 52.8%. A big part of the reason that ESPN is favoring them and that NC State, I think, has a chance to come in here and knock Wake Forest off is their quarterback, Leary here, who's having a sneakily good season and really moving in, I think, elusively, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean, kind of under the radar, moving into being one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC this year. Total surprise move by his part. 2,475 yards passing, 25 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Has had a very, very good season, especially in the minimizing the turnovers department. Wake Forest, I think they're overranked. They haven't really played anybody that I would say is a quality win, which you could say for pretty much all ACC schools, but they haven't really gotten and beaten anybody. And they do play some tough teams out the rest of the season here. They just played North Carolina, play NC State. They still have to play Clemson, and I think they have one more game after that. Because they're 7 and they're 5-0, 8-1. So yeah, they still have 3 more games. So, so they have 1 more game after that. I can't remember exactly who they play. Boston College. I think they play Boston College. Anyhow, this is a Wake Forest team that hasn't really had a chance to prove themselves. Well, they have a chance to prove themselves here. And while it won't play into moving into competition for the playoffs, it will move into competition for a better potential New Year's 6 bowl here for the ACC champion. So both these teams, like I said, that conference championship or that division title on the line in this one. Massive matchup in the ACC between number 16 NC State and number 12 Wake Forest. I'm going to go with ESPN on this one. I do think NC State will take the win because I think that, like I said, I think Wake Forest is a little bit overrated. I think Leary is the better quarterback in this matchup, even though the Wake Forest quarterback has more yards. I think that NC State's had a little bit of a tougher schedule, has proved themselves a little bit more this season. I think that they do take the win. I'm going to call over in the over-under, but not by much. Either way, it's going to be a very impressive, or not impressive, but very interesting matchup to watch for sure. All right, number 1 game of the week. Final game. Here we go. Last one. Number 1 game of the week, and that is number 8, 9-0 Oklahoma, undefeated Sooners, completely outside of the playoffs this year, which has shocked a lot of people in the nation, going up against number 13, 7-2 Baylor, noon on Fox. This is a massive game for a couple of reasons. First off, and most importantly for any team, is the conference championship is completely still on the line. Oklahoma, of course, undefeated, but right behind them, Baylor and Oklahoma State. Baylor sitting at 4-2, and Oklahoma State sitting at 5-1, waiting for one team ahead of them, specifically here Oklahoma, but waiting for one team to make one slip, and then the race is back on. And Oklahoma, there's a reason, and I absolutely, there's people disagree with the CFP. Overall, I actually agree with a lot more things on this CFP committee than I disagree, and I think they've done a good job of overcoming some of those Power 5 biases that tend to favor teams that haven't really had that great of a season just because of their namesake. So that Power 5 blue blood bias, and they've done a good job of overcoming the East Coast bias for sure, and putting the Mountain West where it deserves to be, which is the top conference in the group of 5. However, I know a lot of people have disagreed with this move to put Oklahoma so far out of the rankings as an undefeated Power 5 team, but there's a reason that they did that. It's because Oklahoma has sucked this year. They have come so close to losing pretty much every single game. Yeah, they got a big win against Texas Tech. Woo woo. They almost lost to Kansas. They almost lost to Tulane. They almost lost to Kansas State. They almost lost to Oklahoma State. I mean, they have they haven't. Did they play Oklahoma State yet? Or almost lost to Texas. I mean, they have almost lost to every single team that they have played. Besides the Texas Tech game, that was their first game that they had a dominant win. Oklahoma, if they still have a chance to make the playoffs this year, absolutely. They're only sitting 8 slots out and they're undefeated. Both of those they're only sitting 4 slots out and they're undefeated. Both of those will play in their favor. But they have to get some dominant wins here to end the season. They're going to have some great opportunities to do it with a game this week, obviously, against Baylor, and I'm just going to look up their schedule because I looked at it before the game, but I'm blanking on who they play the rest of the week as the season here. So yeah, they still have to play Oklahoma State, they still have to play Iowa State. So this is a tough stretch here down the final part of the season because they have to play Baylor, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State, which are the 3 toughest teams, I think, maybe besides Texas, but 3 of the toughest teams in the Big 12 this year. And that's great for Oklahoma because it gives them a chance to finish strong, make a statement. They could move from 8th to 2nd or 3rd with a massive showing here to finish the year. But they have to dominate these teams. I think an undefeated Oklahoma would still have a shot of getting into the playoffs, even if all of those wins are close, because these are good teams that they're finally playing, versus the rest of their schedule have been against, not that great of teams overall. Big 12 and Texas, Texas is pretty good, but the rest of these teams, Kansas, Texas Tech, TCU, West Virginia, Nebraska, Tulane, they're not having great seasons this year. Nothing against those programs, they're just not having great seasons this year. So, the main point here, though, is that Oklahoma needs to finish strong. They're playing top teams end of the year, and they need to come out and they need to blow these teams away if they want a chance of being able to go in and represent the Big 12 in the playoffs. Oklahoma is favored by only 5.5 points, even though they're given a 68% chance of winning according to ESPN. A big part of it, of course, is going to be who's starting for Oklahoma, Caleb Williams or Spencer Rattler. Caleb Williams started the last couple of games, but of course Spencer Rattler was their starter to start the season there and had a great year last year. They were a Heisman contender to start this season, and it's one of those weird situations where you have a top team that has a Heisman contender, a first-round draft contender that doesn't lose and gets replaced, but he absolutely deserved to be, and Caleb Williams was responsible for that comeback to beat Texas. So That, however, neither of those. So first off, whoever starts this game is going to make a big impact on the win, and also how either of those players play in this game is going to make a big difference on in the win or loss for Oklahoma. And I would not be surprised to Caleb Williams. I believe he's going to be the one coming in and starting this game. I think he's earned that, but I would not be surprised if he has 2 drives that aren't looking great. He's starting to stumble a bit. Would not be surprised at all to see Spencer Rattler right back in it. However, my top player of the game for this, or the key player, is not going to be an Oklahoma player. It's going to be a Baylor player. Baylor running back Abram Smith, 1,055 yards rushing, which is good for 9th in the nation in rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, averaging 7.3 yards per carry. He's going to give the Oklahoma defense a massive headache. It's a defense that has not been consistent and has given up a lot of points and a lot of yards against subpar competition. I mean, the fact that they allowed Kansas to hang in there as long as he did, even though a big part of that was offensive slumping, but the fact that they allowed Kansas to even be in that game speaks a lot to where this program is at this season, and why they're number 8th in the nation and not moving into 6th or greater. You know, obviously, usually an undefeated Power 5 team would be in the top 4 for sure. So there is a reason. I absolutely agree with the committee's decision to keep Oklahoma out, but they have a chance to switch that decision to prove themselves here coming down the final stretch, and it starts here with Baylor. I do think that Oklahoma gets the win. I think that they're motivated enough. I think that they are have that goal in sight. That playoffs is now in their sights, and they know what they need to do. They're motivated. They want to prove themselves, and I think that they want it. There's not like I talked about motivation, right? Motivation is enough of a factor, and why a team is playing is enough of a factor for overcoming even difficulties within your own roster. And I think that's going to be good enough for Oklahoma here to come in and get this win finally against a top quality opponent. And I think that they're going to do it in a way that's not been as close as some of their other ones. I think they do finally get about a 10-point win here against Baylor. Baylor team that is coming off of a tough loss against TCU. Now that might motivate them to come in big and try to win this game. And it is, of course, at Baylor, so that's going to be tough as well. But like I said, Oklahoma has so much more to play for in this one. Even though the Big 12 championship is a big goal, Oklahoma is still playing for that championship and for the playoffs. They want a chance to prove themselves. They've been beat up and ragged on all year long, and the playoff committee rankings, I think, was a massive wake-up call for this team. They finally showed themselves against Texas Tech, beating, which, you know, is, like I said, Texas Tech's not a significant win, but the fact that they were to beat a bad team by as much as they did finally, when they have almost lost to a lot of bad teams, shows that this Oklahoma team is starting to turn a corner, I think, and will be a little bit of a different team coming here down the rest of the stretch. So I'm going to call Oklahoma on the win and over on the over-under. But do not be surprised, like I said, at all if Caleb Williams struggles for Spencer Rattler to come in. And if Oklahoma struggles in this one at any point and Baylor smells blood in the water, don't be surprised for the Baylor Bears to roar in, crush Oklahoma's dreams of not just getting to the playoffs, obviously, but also potentially knocking them out of contention for the Big 12 championship, depending on how the rest of the season goes for Baylor or Oklahoma State here down the stretch. All right, thank you for watching this video. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe. I do these weekly videos where it's, like I said, it's not all Boise State stuff, obviously, as this video shows. I do weekly reviews of the top 10 games or previews of the top 10 games of the week, coming up on week 11. A few more games here in the week, or a few more weeks in the season for me to review, and I'm also going to be doing a bowl game review once the bowl games are announced. Very, very excited for that. So make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you for watching this video, and as always, go Big Blue!